When the going gets rough, you know how the saying goes. Sometimes things happen. Life happens, and it's not always our fault. In this podcast, we'll feature real-life testimonials from people like you, from good times to bad, funny memories and hard lessons learned. Everyone has a story, and everyone has been there. From business owners to parents to young adults, the Hive Five aims to tell stories of overcoming the struggles of adulting while celebrating the little victories of life. In each podcast, our guests will give insight to 5 key takeaways from someone who's been there and done that, leaving you better than when you started. Thank you so much for listening today. My name is Kagan with BriteBee, and we also have Catherine Parker, Marketing Director of BriteBee.
Hey guys, thanks for coming back to the Hive Five podcast.
And today we have a special guest, Matt Jones. He is with Verge Law Group. He's an entrepreneur, startup lawyer, and also a mentor for the startup community in the OKC area and other. And he's also heavily involved with Stitch Crew and the Thunder Launchpad. How are you, Matt?
Doing well, guys.
Hey, thank you so much for being on. Well, let's just get started here. So you are a lawyer. You are in a large office space with lots of other lawyers and working till midnight every night.
No, surprisingly, that is incorrect.
Tell me exactly what you do then, because that's my only thought on a lawyer.
Well, you wouldn't be incorrect about thinking about most lawyers like that, but I'm a startup lawyer, so I represent startups, entrepreneurs, growth companies, investors, just anyone in the startup and entrepreneurial ecosystem. And so I am a one-man shop right now. Contract out a lot of litigation and patent work to some of-counsel attorneys that I work closely with. But by and large, I handle mostly corporate and real estate transactions and help entrepreneurs create ideas, help them grow their company, and help them transition their company if they are successful enough and have an exit.
So give us an example of just some, I know that you can't say what companies you work with, but are you looking more for the tech startups, or are there certain companies that really fit your niche?
Yeah, I work with a lot of tech startups. I usually refer to them in buckets or types of clients. And so a lot of technology startups, that is a huge component of my practice. Another area would be on the other side of the coin, private equity investors and investment groups who are looking to invest in startups, as well as mom and pop, just community oriented, whether it's be hospitality or just community-based startups and businesses. And then I do quite a bit of work for creatives and advertising agencies and just kind of professionals within the entrepreneurial network as well.
So how are you getting all this business? Are you reaching out to them? Are they reaching out to you?
I have a blimp that I fly around with my name on it.
Right.
No,
MJ, the Michael Jordan of Verge Law Group.
Right. Yeah, that form of advertising is outdated. But and I think you knew that. But no, I've really just kind of here in Oklahoma City, at least, and I have clients everywhere, but primarily in the Oklahoma City metro area. Really, there's not many attorneys doing what I'm doing on the ground level. And so I've really just cultivated a community here. And through that, just word of mouth and just relationship building, community focused outreach. And really that's cultivated kind of a community of entrepreneurs who just come to me by and large. I'm not really going out much anymore. I mean, early on in my law practice, it was a lot of hustling. But right now it's fortunate to have a lot of people knocking on my door.
Is this your first venture in the scheme of law? Like whenever you first started this career, did you start with Verge Law Group or did you do something before this? I mean, how did you end up where you are?
No, I worked out of law school at a traditional law firm for about 4 or 5 years and got some good mentorship there. And so Verge Law and my practice of solely representing entrepreneurs and startups, that evolved a few years back. So it wasn't my first rodeo in the legal world, but I had a few good mentors at the prior firm that I was at that kind of helped me launch this.
Matt, let's be real. If you're dealing with a lot of startups, honestly, I don't think that a lot of lawyers would think that's probably the sexiest way to go when you're looking at doing law. And I think one of the reasons is because you're dealing with a lot of people who sometimes don't even know where to go, how to start. They don't even know how to maybe even get an incorporation. Do you feel like that's the case?
Yeah, a little bit. I think, honestly, I mean, if you're starting a business, I mean, you're going to have legal needs. And so it's just an overlooked area from a lawyer's or professional provider standpoint. Just because presumably, I mean, a lot of times startups don't have a lot of money to pay for professional services. So it's just not, it doesn't, at least on the outset, look like a lucrative opportunity, which I think is false and misleading. But I think that's why you just don't have a lot of people going after it. I mean, it's starting to pick up steam, but honestly, I think a lot of lawyers see what I'm doing and they desire this type of lifestyle, being on the ground and a more casual, interactive, community-focused practice rather than up in a tall building, isolated away, for 10 hours a day in one office and not getting out and interacting with people. So I think that there's this interplay of people seeing that this is a great alternative and lifestyle type business, but at the same time not knowing how the numbers and how the clientele can justify just making a career out of it. So there's just, I think it's kind of in a gray area right now.
I imagine that you probably stay extremely busy working with startups. I mean, if other startups are anything like us, people are probably constantly reaching out to you with questions that seem impossible, but probably for you are really simple. So I can only imagine what all you do on a day-to-day basis. I know that's a loaded statement, but obviously as a startup lawyer, you've dealt with a lot of companies at all different levels. So what are some challenges that you see that seem to transcend all stages of business?
Yeah, and honestly, this is pretty much in any area. I mean, this is pretty consistent. And I apologize for it being such a simplistic statement, but I mean, really, we live in a relationship world, and so it's governing relationships amongst people, as simple as that sounds. So whether that be legal issues amongst co-founders or an employee-employer, independent contractor, company relationship, or a vendor company relationship, managing those, really from a one-person freelancing business all the way to a Fortune 500 company, managing relationships of people and all that entails, and the diversity and the different issues that come up in that. I mean, that's consistent no matter how big your company is. So that's by and large and far and away the number one thing.
So what are some maturing points that you see in businesses that maybe just start, with an idea and then grow to this large company? If you're working with startups, then I'm sure people probably stay with you as they grow. We just want to kind of know what are those maturing points that you've seen?
Yeah, and no two businesses are alike, and so it's different across the board. But I think some common trends on that some commonalities that you'll see. Obviously, revenue and generating revenue and building out product lines. If you're a product-based business, or scaling your service-based business, really it's at that tipping point when you're out of the creation phase of the business and going into that growth mode. And there's just a myriad of indicators and, as you're saying, maturing points that tend to pop up. Bringing on employees would be an obvious one. Raising capital. I mean, if you're in need of raising, whether it be debt or equity or a hybrid of the two, that usually indicates that you're entering into a different chapter or stage of the business. Those two come to mind. I think just more mature and professional, robust relationships with the clients and customers that are bringing in money for the businesses as well. I mean, you'll see early on in the startup's life, it's kind of all hands on deck, just get something down on paper and hopefully we can make a sale, to where then it transitions into, okay, well, now that we're our product or our service is being validated, now let's kind of backtrack and think, how do we structure our relationships with vendors or suppliers or clients or customers or whatever to more strategically align with growing our company.
Matt, would you consider yourself a counselor as well to founders and startup entrepreneurs, or would you consider yourself a counselor only to myself?
Yes. No, 100%. I mean, that being really, that's I think the meat and the bones of what I do is advising and counseling on issues that just can't be reduced to just simplistic formulas or, online services or whatever the case might be. And so, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think we live in a very dynamic world with variables, interacting with us every day, coming at different angles. And there's just the human element of guiding people through this myriad of legal responsibility and duties and so forth. The human element of that just necessitates more of a relationship and a counseling service rather than just more of an a la carte, shoot from the hip and just on demand type relationship.
Well, BriteBee has had the opportunity to have some counseling services. I call them my counseling sessions, because I feel as if that I'm always talking about things that I don't really know about, and then also my fears and the struggles, and it's all intertwined, and it's just kind of this big mess. And then I call Matt, and I think he's going to fix it all. And one thing that has been always encouraging to me is he always listens, and also he does give it that human aspect of it's very important to actually hear what we're saying and then start working through it together. And as you said, it's all about the relationships. And when you said that, I started thinking about the recent calls we've had, and it's always talking about people and how we're going to be able to establish this relationship together. Yeah,
well, that's encouraging to hear. And I really just think that's how most people should approach life in their profession. I mean, I think we don't live in a world of ideas or possessions or whatever. I mean, really what's around us and the businesses that are being built and the products that are being pushed out to help us flourish as a community. I mean, at the end of the day, you boil it down and it's just a bunch of people accumulating their talents and resources to make it happen. And so, we live in a people world, and for lack of better terminology. So I appreciate you saying that, though. That's what I strive to accomplish and provide clients, friends, colleagues.
Absolutely. And I'll appreciate about $100 discount on my next bill.
I thought being on this podcast, I was actually charging you for it. So I guess we're gonna have to figure that out.
Oh, ouch!
Yeah, well, it's all right. Let me make a note to kind of cancel that one out right there.
That is awesome.
So Matt, for those people maybe looking to start a business, what things would you recommend they examine and questions they answer before embarking on a startup journey?
Definitely, they need to determine what type of business they want. And I don't mean whether it's an LLC or corporation or whatever. I mean, they do need to figure that out, and hopefully a good lawyer would guide them in that. But they need to determine whether or not this is a lifestyle business, a community business, or if this is going to be a high growth, large venture. And because all of those entail just different paths and different approaches. And I think a lot of people, they desire, for example, a lifestyle business where there's freedom and flexibility, but yet then they pursue a path of scaling, bringing on employees, and then they realize that they're tied more, that they've just essentially become an employee of their own company because they just didn't have that foresight on the front end. And then conversely, I mean, if you want to build a high growth startup and scale and raise money and potentially have an exit, then you probably shouldn't have the expectation that you're going to have a lifestyle type of that your lifestyle won't reflect, some of the people maybe that you're trying to mimic out there that have kind of built a lifestyle around their business. And so identifying what you're looking for is by far number one. And I see a lot of people having to unnecessarily pivot and kind of backtrack a little bit because they didn't really have that foresight on the front end.
There's no good or bad to either, like which one's the right way to go or the wrong way to go. It's really based upon what you want to do and also what you can handle and what fits
correct,
the business
100%
best.
Correct.
Right?
There's neither of them are better or worse than the other. They're just two different approaches. I mean, if you want to eat an apple, then you're not going to go to an orange tree and pick an orange. And so neither of them are wrong or neither of them are bad or good. They're just completely different.
So we've talked about how to start a business and definitely knowing the idea behind and what you're trying to accomplish there. What would you say are the next steps to move on? Would it be the legal side, or would you say actually test out the product, test those things before you start considering? Where would you start?
I'm going to give you a very lawyerly answer. It depends. And so if there's any sort of risk exposure out there, whether it be a risk that you might be infringing on somebody's intellectual property, or that you're violating any non-compete or non-solicitation or some type of agreement, or whether or not you're just pursuing a risky venture. Like if there's a risk involved there, then I think the legal, consulting some legal issues early on would be my recommendation, just to create a foundation to where you're not moving forward with uncertainty. But if that's not the case, I think that I wouldn't be pushing your product out to the market without getting a legal foundation. But in terms of testing ideas and market research and getting feedback and informally just trying to test the waters, I think that that would be a good place to start without needing a robust legal plan or a robust financial or accounting system set up. And so it really depends on kind of where you're at.
So let's take off the legal hat for a second and just talk about you and maybe the struggles that as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, and that this is not the only thing that you've invested in. You've invested in some other things. So let's talk about the challenges there. What have you faced personally that has been a challenge for you specifically, maybe even for your family?
Great question. I think I have 3 kids and I'm married. And so to give some context to that, my wife stays at home with our kids and she has a little side business. So she has a little entrepreneurial bent to her as well. But by and large, she stays at home with them, which I'm grateful for, with a much harder job than I'll ever have. But
true.
So to really, I think and I don't know if struggle is the right word, but one of the challenges at least is whenever you're a business owner or an entrepreneur, when you're trying to do this on your own, that you don't have a big organization that has your back. I mean, in that situation, your workload is determined a lot of times by the client themselves. And so you might have one week where you have 80 hours worth of work that you have to push out. And then the next week you have 10 hours. And so it's just managing the fluctuations and being flexible with just the uncertainties of the day, at least, I would say at least early on in an entrepreneur's life. I mean, I think, and I'm starting to see it in my practice where there's more steady rhythms that I can plan for. But when you're early on and you're building something, it's just the uncertainty the uncertainty of time, the uncertainty of how much work you're going to get, the uncertainty of whether or not you're going to get paid. I mean, just, you have to be able to live, you have to just be able to live in a world of uncertainty and accepting the fact that that's okay, and that it's not, that at the end of the day, those things that you used to think were secure anyway really probably aren't that secure when you boil it down. And so that's been kind of a side benefit to going out on my own and realizing that, I don't want to say the hard way, but just kind of through trial and error, is that I feel more secure now because I have a skill set where I know I can go out and sell something and make money for our family. Whereas before, I was reliant on, just a larger organization paying me on a biweekly basis and go home and then rinse and repeat over and over again.
I would definitely say that the startup world is not great for people who really like their routine. It's very non-routinely.
Right. But what I will say to that point, though, is you are correct. But I think that to succeed as a business owner or entrepreneur, that you have to take some initiative and build in strategic routines and habits that are going to fit this particular lifestyle and this particular path. Otherwise, I think you're just going to get swallowed up by the world. But you're right. It's not, if that's a highly valued thing, then you're going to have to wrestle through that, no doubt.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a good point that you make, because routine is important to, any day for anybody. But, you just kind of have to work on the fly when it comes to being part of a startup. So
Yep.
that's been an interesting thing to learn for sure. What is a mistake that you have learned as far as entrepreneurship, or maybe even in your practice, that was such an important lesson that you haven't forgot or want to share with others so that they wouldn't make that same mistake?
Yeah, that's a good question. Early on, I used to set kind of specific goals to reach, and then I quickly learned that there's little I can do to influence the outcome, the very end product of what at that time my goals were trying to be. And so I think the mistake I made was making too many specific goals where I couldn't control the outcome. And now I've kind of shifted that to, I know the processes and the habits and going back to routines, that if I do those, that there's a high correlation to success. And so the one thing I can control is doing the plan and the process and the routine and the habits that I know have led to my success, and continually doing those, knowing that at the end of the day, there's a high likelihood that that's going to turn out successful to the ultimate goal. But knowing that I control the outcome of whether or not I achieved XYZ, which was part of the process, as opposed to whether or not I can achieve a certain financial goal or a certain number of clients or a certain project goal or whatever the case might be. That's just out of my control. So I don't think that's universally true for everyone. I wouldn't say that advice is for everyone, but I think that a lot of people probably could kind of reevaluate whether or not they're setting their goals on things they can't control, or whether or not their goals are more tied to processes that they can control and that likely lead to good outcomes.
Matt, all of your feedback has been really enlightening, and I know that you've prepared 5 takeaways for everybody who's listening today. If you will share your 5 takeaways from the business world, the personal world, whatever it is that you've got, now's your time.
Well, thank you. And this is something Kagan and I talked about, so I'll just start it out with number 1 is momentum is everything. Once the ball gets rolling, then good things happen if you can keep the ball rolling. But if the ball stops, then it is extremely difficult to get back up and get that thing rolling again. So when you have momentum, well, for one, seek to create momentum. And then when you have it, do everything you can to preserve it and keep it going. Number 2 would be progress, not perfection. So always just be striving to, whatever your venture is, to just be striving for progress without the expectation of perfection. Perfection is the goal and the pursuit of perfection is going to stifle progress, and you won't be where you want to be if you're being held back because you don't think whatever you're doing is a perfect outcome. Number 3, I think, would be, I think this applies more towards individual entrepreneurs or individual founders rather than companies as a whole, but discover where you are most irreplaceable and then triple down on that. So whether it's what skill set or what do you have to offer to the company or to the community at large, that frankly, if you were to leave and not offer that anymore, that there would be a huge dent or a huge void left because of that. And if you can find that magic mix or that sauce that makes you irreplaceable, then success will follow. It's just simple economics and market forces. And so then number 4 would be, I just really think simplicity and leanness wins. We tend to overcomplicate things and build complicated systems, but at the end of the day, some of the most successful businesses that I've encountered are built on almost embarrassingly simple and lean, with a simple and lean infrastructure. And so don't overcomplicate it and start small and start simple, because if you build something complicated, it takes a lot more effort to undo that when you need to, rather than if you build something simple and need to add on to it, that's a lot easier to do. And then I think number 5 is more of just from a personal standpoint, is just make sure that all your buckets are full. So for me, it's vitality, connection, and contribution are the 3 buckets that I daily evaluate to make sure that those are on a personal level full, because I know that professionally and in every aspect of my life, it'll pour over and have an effect. And so making sure with vitality that my emotional health, physical and spiritual state of being is just in alignment where I want it to be. In terms of connection, just making sure that I'm feeling connected to those around me, feeling a meaningful part of our community, that I'm just engaged with people around me. And then with contribution, just making sure that I'm using my skills and my time and resources to make a difference in the world. So that's all I got for you.
Well, it is much appreciated, and we really appreciate you being on today. We want to remind everyone of how to get in touch with you if they do have any questions, concerns, grievances, whatever they need to address with you. How do they do that?
Yeah, I think email would be the best bet. My email is mjones@vergelaw.com. That's V as in Victoria, ERGELAW.com.
Well, this is about the amount of time that we have today, but we want to remind everyone to make sure to subscribe, and also please give us reviews. Let us know how we're doing. Also, if you are looking for insurance quotes that don't sting, make sure to go to BriteBee.com, click Get a Quote, and you'll find qualified agents of your choice and in your control. Hope everyone has a wonderful day, and we'll see you next time.